Shut up. You gonna say a quote? That peaked.
Whoa, you're so
You
powerful.
cut off for me.
Welcome
To what?
Toronto Defiant. We're in Toronto. We're live in Toronto. It's cold. It's cold. I can hear drill in the distance.
Drill?
Yeah, 104.
Drill.
Yeah, drill, you know?
Drill?
Yeah, you know, like the genre of music, drill rap.
No, never heard of that.
No,
Kinda
never
kinda
heard of that.
Kind of like grime almost.
Oh, but it's a Toronto thing.
But is it like?
Well,
is it for
I think-
do miners sing it?
it's pretty
Diggy diggy hole.
no.
Oh, yeah.
No. It's popular in Toronto, but yeah, I don't know. What I've noticed is so many influences that are in like North London, the exact same influences in Toronto. And I think
Oh,
maybe
that's
it
cool.
comes from like the I don't know where it comes from. Yeah. Pretty
Okay,
interesting
well,
though.
cool.
But yeah, a lot of parallels between that and Toronto. But anyway, welcome to the Toronto
Drake
Defiant
is from
preview.
Toronto.
Huh?
Drake is from Toronto, I think.
He is. Yeah, there's Drake, as you can see.
Whoa, there he is.
Real life photo of him.
Who do you think from the Toronto Defiant is most into Toronto culture?
I was going to say that.
KDG. Because I actually watched an interview with KDG, and
Really?
he
I thought
said he
That's cool.
recognized Toronto and said that it was a fun city to go to because he watched Toronto Raptors in the NBA, and he knew that the environment was nice in Canada, and he liked Toronto because he said that the air quality wasn't too great in Korea, and he said I looked forward to going to Toronto because it was like better air, nice nature, and he liked the
Not
Toronto
bad.
Raptors.
Lovely.
So there you go.
There you
Okay,
go.
pretty
KDG.
decent.
Sick.
Who did the Toronto Raptors have last year, Bren? Didn't they do really well? Dude, Matt would be crucifying us right now. If
Didn't
he
they
were-
have?
Were they the
They
team that had
did.
Kawhi Leonard?
Yeah, wasn't it Kawhi
Yeah.
Leonard?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't
And then
know,
with
but
the
I think
Yeah.
it
Clippers,
is.
they were
I
good.
really
they were in
wanna
the finals
show-
2 years ago. They were champions 2 years ago, and
Yeah,
then
they
they had
were.
like
I
an off
remember-
year
I remember when they
last
won.
year.
Wasn't there some weird Instagram stream or something? There was something weird that popped off in like the gaming space based on it. I swear there was.
Really?
Or something.
What?
Anyway, well, it doesn't matter.
It
Let's
doesn't
get
matter.
into the team preview. You know, we've heard whispers on the wind of you guys wanting us to review and go over to Toronto Defiant, and this is a team that again has gone in. They had a direction they were going in initially, and then they took a 90-degree turn, and they have gone since then in that one direction in terms of the building of this roster. And it felt like early on, do you remember the rumors that we had?
Oh.
That they were building a Western super team.
The rumors.
That was the rumors.
They
that we had
abounded.
heard. And they kept on Logics, and obviously they brought back Beast. And that was like the kind of direction they were going, and we were like, we had question marks in our heads, appearing above our heads, question marks everywhere. And we were wondering, how are they going to be able to do this when they're competing with so many other teams?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out they realized, it's a bit of a fool's errand.
Yeah, fuck it.
And they took a bit of a pivot off of the back of it, and I think a very good job doing so, because look at the team that they have built now. Just looking at face value here, there is some real potential locked away in this roster. It's being led by someone who is highly regarded in the Overwatch scene, which is KDG, in terms of his impact on the overall scene. I've only heard good things from him, and it gives me a lot of hope, honestly, for the Toronto Defiant moving forward as a roster. And this has typically been a team that's never really seen success at all. You know, if I'm thinking back, COVID has eliminated my brain sense of time, but it was last year, right, when they had people.
People.
when they heard
Just specify
chauffeur
anybody.
agility.
Everyone else, like,
Yeah.
how many years
Chauffeur
ago was that?
agility's
1,
grieved.
2?
That was last year. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Come on,
Yeah.
Grandpa, you can do it.
And they had none locked.
And then
It felt like a bit of a streamer team. Is
Mate,
that fair to say?
the Toronto Defiant, if you want to go through the history of them, they have floundered at every opportunity to create a fan base, I feel. Like in the first year, they had a full Korean team that they came into the league with that underperformed despite the fact they had some decent pieces on that roster. You know, Yakpung back in the league now at this point. Ivy has been fantastic on other teams as well. They did nothing. They flew completely under the radar, and they tried to pivot mid-season by picking up popular players like Gods, and I think Mangachu was on this roster, and they had Sharik as well, and that just never went
Sharik.
anywhere. I mean, that was just
Dead agilities.
it was just nonsense.
Crazy team.
Yeah, and then they picked up agilities for this
sure.
year, right? I think.
Was it this year?
Yeah, I think they picked up agilities at the end of 2019 to join the 2020 season. Sorry, I mean last year.
Yes, it was.
And so they pivoted fully into being like we are representing Canada team. We're going to pick up some of the most popular players in the league. Kariv, Agilities, Surefour, going to keep Mangachu on. Like all of that kind of stuff. And then they just weren't that great.
Yeah. They just kind of, they wallowed in mediocrity for the longest time. And now we're faced with a new scenario here where it seems like early on when they were building, like we said, the context of this was that they were building a Western super team. They pivoted away from that pretty quickly, realizing that the amount of top level, really elite level Western players, pretty limited. And instead, they put KDG in charge of building out the rest of this team off of any other available players and pieces that they could really get their hands on. And I think they've done a pretty reasonable job, all things considered. And they're placed in this environment, if you compare them to a lot of other teams who have done something very similar. But the one takeaway for me is that it is KDG who is kind of building this firsthand. And he has had a lot of experience in contenders. He's presumably, I haven't looked up the actual histories of a lot of these players, but KDG has worked with a ton of different players in Korean contenders. Like a ton. I'm
not actually sure how many of these he's worked with. I don't know whether he's worked with like some of the other ones, but
not particularly.
But I mean,
sure.
there's a pretty decent core of Philadelphia players that have come over with him from the fusion with Sado and Hisu.
Yeah, we just did. We just recorded the New York Excelsior preview, and I feel like one of the things that we stressed when we were talking about the New York Excelsior was kind of the New York Excelsior's approach, which is picking up a lot of DPS players and not really having much flexibility for the tank line and support line. And that was their kind of approach. It's almost like the opposite for Toronto. Despite the fact that they do have 3 players in each role, the reality is I can't see too many scenarios where Logix and Beast get playtime over the core of this team, of the core Korean roster that's present here. Because you're kind of creating obstacles where there wouldn't be some otherwise. You know, in terms of the communication structure within the team. So when I'm looking at this roster, I guess I'll start with that then. Do we anticipate Logix and Beast to get much playtime? Do we? What kind of impact do we expect from them in this roster being placed?
I think Logix has the opportunity to play a little bit. I think that Nice and Hisu, for all the credit and praise we give them, I think that Logix probably has a better tracer and maybe even long range hit scan comparing to Hisu when it comes to a lot of those heroes. So I think that KDG, when he looks at the damage players at his disposal, I do think that Nice will probably have to play most of that time if they need a flex player because of obvious reasons. But I think that Logix definitely complements Hisu in a way that I think is pretty nice to have in a DPS position. So I think that while I'm not quite sure about Beast, because Sado will probably take the brunt of that time for obvious reasons. Sado is really good. We all stan Sado in this podcast.
Yep.
But
Sado
Logix,
stonks.
I definitely think Sado stonks for sure. Might be time to sell soon, to be honest. But Logix definitely, I think, has room because of how he excels at Tracer and other hit scan heroes to get some playtime here.
I would go even further than that and just say it's actually necessary that Logix plays when you look at the way that this
how they overlap.
When you look at this roster. If you just field Naste and Hisu full time and you want a full Korean roster and you don't actually put the work into integrating the language and make this a mixed team, then you're going to really struggle with just
You're going to feel
Hisu
so
and Naste.
isolated.
Like, what do you do if you want to play Sombra Tracer, for example? You're going to be trying to field Naste on the Tracer? Okay, that's just leaving talent on the table, to be honest. And then what if it's like you want Hisu, or maybe you want some kind of like double hit scan approach as well. Again, Logix is going to be the guy that comes in to play that alongside Hisu. You're going to have metas where Logix is required to play for this team. And so the later they put that off, the worse it's going to be. So I think the healthiest thing for Toronto is actually dive deep into this, integrate them really early on in the team. I know that Logix was playing some early, or was intended to play some early scrims with the other guys once they all got ready to play scrims. And I'm talking like end of last year, I did an interview piece for the Overwatch League with Logix. And we were talking about that, and he said, yeah, once they get to the team house, we're going to be playing, and we'll see how I integrate with the team. So clearly there was a plan at that point, and I think that you need to get in on the ground floor with that kind of stuff. KDG's worked with mixed rosters before. He should be comfortable doing that kind of stuff. It's necessary. You got to play Logix at some point here. You can't just rely on Naist and Hisu.
Yeah, I did. The one that I had down was one of the few. I think maybe Logix when they start playing a little bit of Widow, a little bit more Widow, if that ever comes around. I can imagine people are still gonna be trying to play Rush, but for Beast, I don't see him playing really at all. I look at the tank line, I'm like, where does he fit? Sorry.
What about Ball? What do you guys think about the idea of having him just specialize as Ball?
Have we seen him on Ball ever?
Why is there a voice in my head that says that he actually has played some Ball?
I don't know. I feel like I've seen him play Ball a little bit, but I could be misremembering. It's just a theoretical benefit for this team. I'm not basing that off Beast has a sick Ball or anything like that. I think he's actually been playing a ton of it in ranked, but then again, everyone was for a while.
Yeah. Also,
but
it's the peak you go when you know your off tank's really bad.
Yeah. I think that with Sado though, you're comfortable on every one of his heroes, other than the Ball. I can't say that I've really seen Sado play a lot of Ball.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's at the same level, and if they wanted to have Beast occupy that niche, it could be something they could try.
And the best thing about the Ball comps as well, generally speaking, is that they require a little less coordination between tank pairs because the Ball just kind of rolls around and does his own thing. And then, you're coming in and pile driving, trying to combo that way. But it's a less, I think, comms intensive than it would be with Ryan Double Shield, etc. Although you look at some of these players anyway, Hisu, Sado, they have been on Team Lastro. They have been on teams that have been half and half. So half Korean and then half an English-speaking talent as well. So I think that there is maybe potential. I would definitely say that Ball would be the go-to for Beast if they do integrate him a fair bit. If we'll see Ball again potentially.
Yeah, I did look up. He did play some Ball for American Tornado in Contenders. That short period he was on American Tornado there, so he did play some Ball actually. That's what I remembered it from.
When I look at this team, I see that they are covering their bases pretty effectively, though, especially with this support line. Because Aztec, from what I've seen of him, the guy has had moments where he just looks like an absolute beast. Lastro, we know, is quite good. And Ansunjay, I don't know enough of. I'll be the first one to admit. I don't know enough about Ansunjay to comment. But assuming they're fulfilling the main support role in the typical way that kind of dynamic happens in the backline, which is typically you have a main support player who is playing their role, and it's up to the flex support player who's really going to be starting to be a bit of a playmaker. It's typically how the dynamic works. There's some cases where that's not happening, with Shanghai Dragons. But in this case, I feel like it's pretty safe to assume that Ansunjay is probably going to be playing that sort of supportive role. Can you guys agree with me here? I don't know. Am I chatting out my ass?
I can add a little bit to the supports if you want. With Aztec, it was funny if you kind of look him up, watch a few of his games. You just even look at his Wikipedia. That's sometimes what you need to do. Look at how many teams he's been on. It's like a billion. Actually insane amounts of teams, then inactive for some rosters too. You're looking at the Boston Academy roster, Uprising. It feels like he hasn't really found too much of a home over the past few years. And if you look at the dates on those two, they're not long at all. O2 Blast, February to May. And then he's on Griffin. Then he's on Phase 2. Then he's on World Game Star Phoenix. And then he's on Uprise Academy. Then inactive. Then on Alone. Then he's blah, blah, blah. He's literally everywhere. He's had good records, of course. You can see the first place wins and whatnot in Contenders. But Aztec's a little bit of a question mark for me because maybe he needs this stability as a player. Looking at Ansunjay, I would say coming from Element Mystic, another player which has a very short history of teams as with a lot of Element Mystic players, they're very, very good at scouting talent. We see
Sure,
a
yeah.
lot of them in the league already, and they're all extremely good. I would put a lot of trust in just the Element Mystics coaching staff and their ability and their scouting as well to say that Anton J, probably pretty cracked, even though there's not a lot of kind of video evidence, not as much as some other players.
My primary argument with the support line when I'm looking at this, though, is mainly looking at the flex DPS or the flex support players, because I think they've covered their bases pretty nicely when it comes to if there's a double flex support meta that we've seen in the past. This is a team that's going to be covered for it. It has happened. Some teams weren't ready for it, and they were kind of butchered off the back of it. But this team is going to be covered in a lot of these scenarios as well. The tank line itself as well, I'm still a little bit iffy in terms of what I want to think about Michelle. I think maybe Michelle has just been a product of the environment that he's played in Seoul typically, where it's been, I cannot think of a more inconsistent, volatile team. So I'm hoping that with KDG here, with Sado alongside him, who has had a ton of experience, we're kind of going to be seeing the best out of Michelle being brought forwards. And that's... I'm pretty sound in mind when I think about the support line and the tank line. And my issues are going to be coming up again from this DPS line in terms of, are they going to be integrating logics? Is there going to be problems with them having overlapping hero pools if they don't inject logics into this team with Hisu and Nice playing? That's going to be where the crux of it comes from, because last year we saw teams having issues with this during hero pools. Some teams just fell out of the meta completely because they couldn't play what was necessary. They couldn't play what was needed. The heroes that those players did play, or that their players did play, ended up getting banned randomly, and they fell on hard times. That's a foreseeable issue for Toronto. But overall, I see a lot of promise with this team, and it's what it comes down to what you were saying earlier, Josh, when it comes to the integration of the Western players and the Korean players. How well they're going to be able to do that? Will Logic see playtime in this team? That's going to be a big question mark, I think, for me moving forward.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions about this team, though. I think that it isn't... There's a lot of people that have Toronto in their like upper tier of North America. And then there's other people that just don't even mention them whatsoever. They kind of forget that they exist because they have a lot of unknown talent. And I say a lot of unknown talent. They really don't have that many rookie players, but I think they've just slipped under the radar for whatever reason. I have so many questions about this team. Does Logix actually have what it takes to perform at a top level? Or is he just somebody that stands out on worse level teams? I think that's a really important question to be answered this season for Logix. This is a season where he really has to step up. Even when he was playing on, like, I think all the way back to the beginning of Logix's career when he played on... well, maybe not the very beginning because he's been playing for ages, but right before the Overwatch League began, and he was playing for Misfits, and he was playing the Tracer role there. They weren't called... Were they called Misfits at the time? I can't remember what they were called. The full Swedish team anyway. But then they also had...
He's not Swedish, but they had a mixed team.
Yeah. Well, actually, they weren't full Swedish. They had Zuppe on as well, Finnish. Whatever. Yeah. Anyway, the team that lost to Giganti in the finals, and
Johnny,
he had been just pounding the entire time coming into the finals, and then didn't perform when he got to the big match at the end. And throughout his career as well, he's looked like a standout star player, but always on poorer performing teams. And the way in which he plays, he gets a lot of value out of individualistic heroes. And I want to see more from him. Like, I want to see that actual integration into a team. This is his best opportunity ever to really prove himself at the top level. He's been hampered by his teams in the past. Can he step up? I also have other questions about Neist for a pretty similar reason. Like, this guy has been a notable player in contenders for so long now. I mean, like, years he's been in contenders because he was underage. And at the beginning portion... like back when he was 16 or 17 or something, he looked like a boss. Like, he was just rinsing teams all over the place. He was, one of the caliber players, almost like Glister, where you looked at him in contenders and he was farming. And he has just slowly ebbed out of the top level where he's no longer notable as much in that elite level rookie status coming into the league. So I don't know what the reason for that is, but I think this is another opportunity for him to really prove himself. He has been noted as an elite level rookie years ago, like at least 1 year ago, before anyone was since anybody's been
crazy to say
talking
that.
about him. And he's only 18.
He's born in 2003.
Yeah, but he's like he's the same.
God.
He's not the same style as somebody like Who Are You?
Yeah.
But it feels like the same kind of thing where he was so hyped up when he was young, and then
You think it might be like a Who Are You situation, like a Flower situation?
Yeah.
where I mean maybe not
Look
in
at the
terms
teams
of
he's been on, bro.
yeah. It's more to do with like has he actually did he peak and maybe get demotivated by the fact that Overwatch League had locked him out of the system, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're really young, I could see that when you're dominating contenders and you feel like you should be going up to the next level and you see all of these other wave of players who are worse than you, you know they're worse than you, and they're going into the league. That, I imagine, can be demotivating for a young player. And
it reminds me a little bit of
if he gets the hunger back,
Sugar
I
Free.
think he could be good.
It reminds me a
Sugar-Free,
little
yeah.
bit of Sugar Free because one of the youngest players in like contenders over the last couple of years. And it was always a little bit of a, like, I don't want to say like a joke, but you look at it and you're like, when's he going to be eligible? It's going to be like, 2056 before he's eligible. You know what I mean? Like it feels like, and I would say it actually feels that amount of time especially for someone like him. And he's a beast. Like he's crazy. But
that's the thing, though.
was
I think
so
that's the
long
crucial thing.
before he could join that it's like you said, Josh, I think you lose almost that motivation a little bit and you're like, oh, bro, I've been on top of contenders for so long, bro. I want to get in the league. And then you can't. Like, that must feel awful. Sorry, Johnny, what are you going to say?
Well, wasn't Sugar Free because Sugar Free quit, right? If I remember correctly, he quit.
He's retired now,
Yeah, he's retired, yeah. But he was still like good at that time.
Which is crazy.
He was like
he
super
popped off the
talented
entirety
at
of his
that
time in contenders, Whereas
exactly.
Nace feels like he's dipped a bit.
Slow down, like he's stagnated, and now people are like, oh, he's a May player. Where it's like, it's like
my point was more like he's in the same situation because of his age, like locked in contenders for that long.
Yeah, it's just crazy though, because I agree with Sideshow. This team is just to me, on paper, it looks promising. And I want to be one of those people that like rank Toronto highly in the North American division. Or I don't know how they brand it, whatever. But like I want to rate them highly in the North American division. But I have so many frustrations with the team. And like I echo some of Sideshow's sentiment. But it's like, I don't think that Nice can be your only flex player on this team. And like, maybe you'd be like, oh, well, Hisu can flex a little bit. But it's like, it's not quite the same. Like, you needed sort of like an Ivy to Hisu. And I don't think Nice can really fill that on his own. Mitchell, I think he's solid. I liked him on Soul Dynasty. But it's like, are we sure that he brings like the entire kit that's required to be like a good team in the Overwatch League? Unproven there. I actually feel the best about the support line almost, because like here's some talent coming into the league that can actually be quite stable for you and look good. But it's like I'm think back to that guy who I'm not quite sure what his role was for the Toronto Defiant, but when they let go some of the team from last year, one of the upper management people tweeted out and was like, we need to win now, and we want to be like a top team. I can't recall his name, and I apologize for that. But they set these high expectations on themselves to win next year. And I just feel like this roster is kind of incomplete. Like there's some things missing that I don't think they're doing the experiment justice. Like I'm all on board for like teams rebuilding and doing it the right way and trying to figure things out. And I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I'll give you a couple of years to figure it out. But I feel like this team honestly needs like another player or two to really make it justifiable and make it worthwhile, because you have so many questions with this rebuild going into this year that are probably going to be like left unanswered going into next year. And then you haven't really done the rebuild justice, and you haven't gotten the answers that you need to go into next year and do like an even better version, like to go version 2.0. It's almost like a bit like the Houston Outlaws, where it's like, hey, you have some stuff, like you're rebuilding, you're trying to be better, but like you're not doing the project justice, and so you go into next year and you don't really know what you're fixing, and there's still so much things to figure out, that you don't have a good sense of what the problem is and how you're going to solve it in the first place. Where I feel like if Toronto Defiant, if they just added like 2 more players to fill some holes here, I think it would be way easier for them to identify what will go wrong this season so they can be even better come next season. I feel like I'm not making a ton of sense, but there are some frustrations here.
I agree with you completely, but I am much more optimistic at for this team, I think, than you are when it comes to...
I am a KDG stan, I will say that. So
yeah,
I'm
a big fan of KDG as well. So here's why I'm really optimistic about it, and I'll try and be as succinct as possible. But I think that this tank line, I think Michelle, you're going to get the best brought out of him now playing alongside Sado. We know Sado's consistent. We know he's good. They've got good coaches. At least from what I've been told, they've got good coaches. I've got faith in KDG. I've heard good things about KDG. I'm hoping that with him as the head coach, this team is going to be placed into a very good direction. The support line, I think that they've just tooled this out for any sort of contingency, which I'm a big fan of. They're aware that they might come across like a double flex support meta or something that requires some weird overlaps. So they've got Aztec and Lastro. Aztec, I've seen fantastic things from when I've been watching his VODs. Lastro, I think, has been quite underrated almost when it comes to the flex,
extremely
flex support.
I think Lastro might be better than Aztec as well, by the way. People are more excited about Aztec.
Yeah, it could be. And Anson J, again, I've already admitted I'm ignorant to this guy's real kind of like caliber of where he can play at, but you guys seem to be quite high on him as well. I think this is probably the strongest part of this entire team is the support line. The issues where we come up is what you were saying, Johnny, with the DPS, I think, because it's too lacking. If they don't end up going with a mixed roster approach, they're going to have too many holes in their DPS line, and it's going to cause issues. It's going to cause obstacles 100% over the course of the season because there's going to come a composition, and I don't think Hisu and Nice are going to be able to cut the mustard with it, you know? If this team, like you said, Johnny, had like 2 more players, but specifically if they had 2 more DPS players, I would feel a lot better, honestly, with the prospects of this team, and I'd be placing them really highly. But with all that being said, I still expect that this is going to be one of the better performing, retooled rosters coming into North America. That's my gut feeling with this roster. When I take a look at it, I see potential with a high likelihood of it being met based off of who's leading this team, a lot of the veteran pieces that are coming together, the fact that, a lot of the things that I do have questions about, I think were a product of the previous environment, the previous teams they were a part of. I've got high hopes for this team.
It's not very volatile, but the ceiling isn't that high.
You think so?
That's what I think about it, yeah. I think that this...
Well, how would they increase the ceiling?
I think the ceiling being increased is a product of, okay, maybe the DPS like being augmented, but also if you the way I think about teams is that when you have a team like this that has a very solid backline where you have a lot of firepower coming out from your flex supports, and you also have a decent proven tank line as well that is very good at being able to empower the rest of their team, but you have slightly weaker and supportive DPS, it's all about the team coordination. Like that is what it comes down to, is playing really well positionally and making the correct decisions and being a smart team. That's so hard to know when none of these guys have played together apart from Sado and Hisu.
It's hard with all the teams though, isn't it?
But I think you can get a better understanding if you have a good idea of like what the core is.
There's not that many teams from what I can think of off the top of my head with a core of players though. There's that pre-existing synergy.
There's a ton in APAC though that have kept a cores and just added talent. Yeah. There's still the elite teams in NA. If we're talking about like
Shock.
If we're talking about Shock, if we're talking about the Dallas Fuel as well, if you want to throw them in the debate. But even when we talk about teams like Washington Justice, for example, they have enough firepower that they don't have to be the absolute smartest team in the world, because they already have that other aspect to their game. This team doesn't have that other aspect to their game. They have to be mega smart, mega coordinated, I think, to get to reach like the true ceiling of this team. That's hard to know whether that's going to be achieved, and it comes down a lot to whether you have faith in KDG and how smart you think the players are. They're going to be presumably coming in English, which some of these guys haven't done before. They have possibly a rookie backline if you think that Aztec is going to get played over Lastro. There's still challenges here to be able to get the most out of Toronto. I don't see them being an elite team in NA.
So, well, okay, excluding Logics and Beast, although I don't say Beast will get playtime. Hisu, Nice, Lastro, and Sado have commed in English before. So I'd say a fair bit of the roster.
Oh, right, yeah. So it's
I think they'll be
only,
fine.
Actually,
yeah, it's just
it'll
Michelle
only
in the
be
back line.
Michelle, in the back line. It'll be
Yeah.
Anson Jet
Okay.
and Aztec.
So I guess that's
I
not
don't
as
think
much of an
that-
issue.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the least issues with this team currently.
Yeah.
What do you think? Okay, go on.
No. I just the way that I opened it by saying that they have low volatility. I don't think they're going to be the team that shits the bed this season. So by virtue of that, they're going to be decent in the standings. But I think it's going to be
all right.
quite challenging for KDG to get a Philadelphia level performance out of this team.
Oh,
if you want
yeah.
to make the direct comparison to
100%.
like. I think some teams are kind of thinking along that line though, and I think Toronto are thinking along that line too. Is we hired the coach from Philly, we hired the main tank from Philly, we hired a DPS from Philly. We should be aiming to be something like Philly from last year. I think you're quite a long way off that, and I think that that's going to be really hard to achieve even the same tier of performance for next year.
What do you think here, George? Because you said that you think the language barriers would probably be the lowest priority problem that this team would face.
Yeah, I think I'd agree on the DPS point. Maybe if you added an extra DPS, I'd feel a lot more comfortable with the non-overlapping hero pools. But looking at what is currently being played, May's still pretty strong. Nice plays May, pretty nice. They have a nice little double sniper pocket too. They can also do a little bit of the Ash as well. I think there will be holes, although no idea what the meta will solidify. I don't know. I'm just going off of what I've spoken with the players and some of the teams that played in Steel Series thing too. I've spoken to people like Fusions. I speak to Smex obviously quite regularly as well about that kind of stuff. So it's depending on what actually ends up getting played, more or less, more often than not. I mean, that will cement Toronto in my head, and I'll be able to kind of place them where they kind of need to be.
Yeah.
On the other hand, though, from what a lot of the players have said, it's a lot about what your team is comfortable with currently, more than just like, and what, depending on what the map is as well, rather than like, oh, it's not like a goats thing where you only play goats. It's not like a double sniper thing where you basically only play double sniper. It's there is a lot of flexibility there to craft your own identity, which is going to be a big benefit, I think, to a lot of teams, especially ones that have retooled as well, as much as Toronto Defiant has, and as much as like NYXL, which we did earlier, has as well. So
one of the things that you've been saying here, Josh, is that it seems like a safe rebuild. Is that what you've been saying?
Yeah, I think it's pretty safe. Yeah.
You think it's pretty safe in terms of the performance,
especially with Hisu.
I think that's exactly what you want, honestly. If you're performing in North America, looking at the environment they're in and who they're up against, so many of these teams have gone for way more riskier ventures.
Yes, they have.
And if safety might be one of the most important factors you can have, just to have that consistency. There's less games in a season. Games matter much more individually. It's not like the previous days of old when there were 40 games in a season and you could get away with just throwing a week. You can't get away with that anymore. There's like, 16 games? That's what a team plays.
Yeah.
So you can't really get away with that anymore. I think the consistency aspect is probably going to be one of the main selling points of this roster for me. And I think that's the basis of what I'm working off when I'm so optimistic about it. I'm looking at the rest of the I guess the West is what you'd call it, that kind of division of teams. And yeah, it's risky ventures from a lot of the teams that are going to be punching at the same level as them.
Yeah.
I think this Toronto Defiant have gone with a pretty reasonable approach to the building of their roster.
But I also want to contrast them to another team that has gone for a low-risk venture, the Atlanta Reign.
Mm-hmm.
They've kept a very low-risk team. They've just
difference.
Yeah, they've just added a shit ton of firepower.
Well, I was going to say that comparable, but the difference for me of why I'm optimistic is because of KDG.
And that's where that's to me is the big thing. Whether you believe in Atlanta or Toronto more this season is not necessarily because there's like a guaranteed one that's going to perform better than the other. It's whether you believe in a fuck ton of player firepower on Atlanta when it comes to their DPS, or whether you believe in the coaching and smart play
Coaching
that
structure.
you're trying to get from Toronto
It's
Defiant.
the bingo card game, by the way.
I think it's easier to get value from Atlanta Reign because they've just picked up players that they know are going to pound in the server. But the long-term success of a team like Toronto, if they really hone that down, and if KDG can prove that he's an elite-level talent and get these guys all on the same page and working really well together, they could end up paying off a bit more.
Yeah. I mean, you guys say that this is pretty safe. I don't know if I feel the same way, honestly.
Really?
I think you look at some of these individuals, and yeah, they have like merit and like they have some level of achievements, but I think our opinion or perspective of some of these players are a product of their prior systems and their prior teams. So when you look at the likes of Sado and Hisu, I think that their performances were a result of also coming from teams that had a good system. I think you look at Michel, who comes from the Seoul Dynasty, like he had a pretty solid role in that team, and I think a bit of a mission, right? So I think a lot of these players are actually just like they come from a background in teams where they had a defined role and they executed that role well, and so I think that's our opinion of them. It's just like how they performed in that specific role. Now you come into a fresh rebuild with Toronto Defiant, and I think, like you guys actually mentioned, KDG is probably more important than we give him credit for, or how much pressure we put on him, because like he needs to build this new system now in a rebuild with players coming from all kinds of different teams. You have 2 players in your support line coming from contenders even, and you need to build up this foundation and this system and this play style for these players to come together and really perform on the same page. Whereas I think like a lot of these players, they actually come from different systems where they perform different roles, and now they need to come together as one single team. I think that's easier said than done, and I think it's going to be immense pressure on KDG to actually build something with this team and make sure that they're good to go for the season. Because no matter how much practice time they've had, like all these guys got signed in November, so that's quite a while away. That's like 4 months ago, but it takes a long time to build up that chemistry, and I think it's on KDG to really make sure that come regular season, this team knows like what they bring to the table, what their identity is, what their strengths, weaknesses, what their play style is, what they excel in, what metas they play, which players, etc. Like I think it's a lot on KDG to figure that stuff out before the regular season starts, and that's how this team performs. But if they struggle with identifying that and figure that stuff out, I don't think you can put too much in the players themselves to change mid-season or bring individual performances to the table and be a difference maker.
Is it lesser time?
Yep. I'm going to give you mine right away.
Go on then.
C. They're a C-tier team. They're stable. They're going to be C. If KDG works some magic with them, they'll move up the table. But until I see magic, I do not expect magic. They're a C.
Yours?
C.
What?
I'm Jaws.
Thank you,
From
Jaws.
as well?
Thank you, main tank Jaws.
No, I'll say C.
Go on and Jaws.
C.
C.
I think C. Yeah.
Wait, I
What a
forgot there's
surprise.
S. Let's say C plus. I'll say C plus.
Nah, I put NYXL as C plus.
Oh,
These boys belong at a C for me.
I'm looking at B for this team.
B
I
tier
think
B
that's
for this
fair.
team.
I think that's fair. I mean, you got Sado, Hisu, you Lustro.
Look at the
like, you got a
environment
lot
they're
of
placed in. Consistency
of-
above
yeah.
all else.
Yeah.
I'm anticipating this team. They're not going to be punching
Yeah,
with teams
sure.
like the Shock, Gladiators, Dallas, Washington, those type of teams. I think
Right.
if they punch into that sphere, join SpaceX. Start getting you're starting to start selling satellites and putting them in orbit.
Going to the moon.
Because you are going to the moon. At that point.
Congratulations. You ranked them. You played yourself.
But I did rank them. Yeah, I mean, but I didn't tell you where I placed those teams in my. That was only for NA as well. I didn't do it.
Oh, in the bottom then.
So I'm not. I didn't play myself. It's
What
still
a genius.
ambiguous.
Ooh, okay, genius.
I think I'm only doing this for NA, by the way. I know we said we were doing it for both, but my letter system now is
Right.
devised.
It seems to change every single time.
So
It
dumb.
does
Does it?
change.
Yeah.
I go with B. I think veteran presence, good leadership in the form of KDG. I think they haven't taken too many risks with this. I love how they've built out their support line. The only minor issue I've got is their DPS, but I think the consistency is the thing that's going to make them climb the standings this year.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to them. I think this Toronto.
A C for consistent.
No, a B. A B for bloody beautiful.
I could get on board with your C+ just purely based on consistency. Well, it's interesting doing NYXL and then going into Toronto because I don't know. I don't know which team is going to end up being the better team. I think they could be pretty similar. But now that I think about it, Toronto should just be ranked higher because they have more teams to farm during the season.
It's not even about more teams to farm. I think it is. They have, if you look at their accolades, they have more going for them, I feel. Genuinely, I do.
You're going off their Xbox gamer score.
Yeah,
I mean, come on,
I'm looking
bro.
at their achievement score. They played, they played Avatar the last Ender. They got the 10,000
they got
Xbox
easy
gamer
1,000
choinks.
points. Yeah.
Yep. I'm pretty high up on this team.
Kurt, are you able to pull up their next 4 games, their first 4 games?
Yeah, that's a good way.
That is, now that we actually have the schedule, we should be able to see, like, okay, if Toronto Defiant are a consistent team, consistency.
Oh, mate.
Okay.
I mean, that's a great beginning.
I think that's a good beginning.
Start.
That gets you morale at the beginning of the year, doesn't it?
That's going to be really hard. Week 3, I think, is going to be really hard, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, good fucking luck with that one.
Yeah, I mean, you're going up against London, which already have the pre-built synergy, and you're going up against the Washington Justice, which is they've essentially just they put in the cheat codes in Age of Empires 2. They've got 1,000 gold, they've got 1,000 wood. They're building fucking Cobra cars,
quick.
you know. Like that's what I look at when I see the Washington Justice. But Vancouver Titans and Atlanta Reign, I think those are winnable games.
Atlanta Reign is an interesting one, man. I think that is a real clash of styles. I think they will be rivals throughout this season, and I think for very different. And they approach their team building in very different ways, extremely different ways. It's KDG versus KSP. I guess it's like it's such a different approach. Yeah. I think that they have winnable games here against Atlanta and London, but I'm not sure I don't know who I would put as favorites in both of those games. Would I put Toronto as favorites in them both?
Don't you mathematically essentially need to go 3-1 to qualify for the top 5 in NA?
I don't know.
What is math? There's 12 teams in NA now, and you need top 5. Don't you? Do you know?
You need top 6.
Who cares?
Well, oh my god! Like, how dumb am I? How would you make a bracket of 5 teams? I'm so dumb.
No, genuinely,
Lord.
I did that
Top
the other
6.
day, Johnny, when I was looking at the. I was looking at a double Olymp bracket for a Valorant tournament.
Yeah.
And I thought there were 5 teams in the upper bracket and lower bracket games. I don't know where I got 5 teams from. I counted it wrong or something. I don't know. It doesn't
Brackets
matter.
do
Why
kind
does
of
it
go
say
over
on
my head too.
Wikipedia that the top 3 are green and the
It
two
doesn't
next
matter.
are-
I'm closing out the show. Listen, you got our ratings. I'm the optimistic Owen of the group. Thanks for watching. Follow our Twitter as well, Plat Podcast down there. You can follow it. Kurt uses the cowboy emoji a lot. Yeah, actually, I quite like that. It's a nice touch. Adds a bit of
what emoji do you use for Toronto? What's the most Toronto emoji?
devil emoji with the icy.
Devil
The devil emoji
No,
with the
it's
icy.
not.
Ice
Oh,
in their veins,
yeah,
you know,
okay.
ice in their veins.
Yeah, okay.
That's what they're going for. Anyway, thank you for watching, everybody. Good night, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.